Hello.
Hi, I'm looking for Billy Mira. Is he there?
This is Billy Mira.
Oh.
What's happening, guys?
Ladies and gentlemen, Billy Mira and the Hitmen, or Billy Mira and the Spectaculars, which are going to be performing the 28th of this month at the Warehouse in Amityville. By the way, that's Richard Christie, Sal Governale, and Billy Mira from the Stern Show. We're going to be working together. And let me tell you right now, Billy Mira over here, he's over here now, who's on the phone. Billy is, if you can actually get a piece of Vegas and shove it into any auditorium, that's what Billy brings to the table. He's got impressions, comedy, music. You're one hell of a showman, sir.
Wow.
Thank you.
So do you, don't get too excited. Do you, because I've seen you perform. You're, first off, for everyone sitting at home, he's a lot more lively when he's on stage. I'm just saying. When he's on this show, he's very subdued.
Well, I'm listening to you. I'm kind of taking in what you're saying.
Oh, well, no one's ever done that to us before. I'm sorry. No one's ever listened to us. So Billy Mira, by the way, Mirabilly, Billy Mira there. And you can, by the way, go to Billy Mira and thehitman.com to get further information about all the shows that Billy's doing, especially the one that's going to be at the Warehouse in Amityville with Sal and Richard from the Stern Show. I have to ask I have a whole bunch of shit I got to ask you. Number one, you were a fan of the Howard Stern Show first and foremost, and the first time you ever called into the show, you called as Ozzy to talk to Ozzy. I did. Right? Didn't you talk to Ozzy directly?
Yeah, I thought I did the greatest Ozzy Osbourne impression at that time, and the Osbourne show was really hot, and I don't think there were many guys doing it. Matter of fact, there was nobody doing it at the time. And I called in, I want to do an impression of Ozzy Osbourne, and I heard Ozzy Osbourne, and so I called into the show, and I think John had picked up, and I started doing the impression. He put me right through. I didn't expect that. I didn't even expect to get through. And I got right through with Ozzy, and I think it was Kelly that were on. Mm-hmm. And I started doing the impression, and Howard, and I go, it's an imposter that's in there right now. It's not really Ozzy. And Howard was like, that's not really a good impression. And Ozzy was kind of like, it's okay, it's all right. You're going to stutter a little bit more, And they were all laughing, but Howard for some reason hung up. I guess he didn't want to, insult Ozzy. Mm-hmm. And I was bummed out. And then that night, I went to a comedy club. This is talking about, I guess the stars lining up. And I run into Sal, but I didn't realize it at first. It was his cousin that was sitting next to him, who I had known, Tony Landolfi. And I kind of the guy was like, you look all bummed out. I'm like, I got to tell you, man, I thought I did the greatest Ozzy impression. And I went, I called the show today. They put me through, and Howard hung up on me as soon as I got on the air. And Sal turned around, and I didn't know Sal at the time, and he says, you're the guy who did the Ozzy Osbourne impression? He goes, everybody was trying to find out who did that impression and why Howard hung up on him. So, because if you can prove to me it was you, I'll have you on the show within like 7 days. So, and this is before Sal was full-time at the show. Yeah. He was like a contributing. He was also a fan and a contributing fan. That's how most people, besides the original crew, had started there. They would just, they would submit bits in those days. And Howard, in those days, was a lot freer. He would pick stuff out that was good, and he would, go through it. And we recorded this phone call with High Pitch Eric, me, myself, Joey Boots at the time, Casey, a bunch of people that were on the show at the time, and Sal. And it was a long bit, and it was playing a goof basically on High Pitch Eric that, that he basically called up Ozzy Osbourne and insulted him, and that he was going to get fired from the show. And it was like a real thing. He really thought this was true when he was talking to Ozzy. He was insulting me. I'm a bigger star than you, Ozzy. I get more chicks and all this other bullshit. And I was, at the time, Sharon Osbourne was sick, so now I started yelling at him, really thinking that, I'm going to call Howard Stern and let him know that, this asshole's calling me. And they played this big bit. So it was like 10-minute long bit, right? And I'm like, there's no way they're playing this. Like, because Sal recorded the whole thing. He orchestrated everything. Well, that week, I'm listening to the show, and I hear, Howard pause for a second, and he starts talking about Ozzy Osbourne, and he starts talking about this bit, and I'm like, this can't be the fucking bit, you know. And sure as shit, he plays the bit, and it was 10 minutes long, and it was like unheard of. And they were goofing on Eric, and then at the end, you know, everybody was like, you know, David Tell was in the studio, so it was a real trip for me at the time because, you know, I was up and coming comedian. I didn't really, you know, I hadn't done a lot at that point except for in the music industry. I was kind of like Richard, with a rock background,
yeah, but
not really a comedy background and a big broadcasting background. And Howard didn't only play it one day; he played it the second day, the next day, all in its entirety again. And then that's when everything started. Yeah, it was an amazing story. And he just, you know, to think that it goes to go from hanging up on me to I actually, you know, was in studio, which was surreal. A year later, sitting there with Howard, and then I would be a contributor. Character on the show for the next 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, well, that's the thing.
Thankfully, that, you know, to Sal Governale.
Yeah, you became an integral part of the program. I mean, you were multiple impressions when they couldn't get somebody like you did. You did David Lee Roth, and David Lee Roth that in 2005 when you guys took over the freaking show, right? Did David Lee Roth so much so that you convinced the press that David Lee Roth was there.
Oh yeah, it was amazing. That, you know, first of all, there was a lot that precipitated that. You know, we were doing all these bits that kind of were making fun of David Lee Roth. I was turning David Lee Roth into a character, and we were doing phony phone calls. And I was going on live with Howard. I would sit there not only as myself, but I would sit there in character as David Lee Roth, and Howard used to get a kick out of it because I would go back and forth sometimes as Ozzy, David Lee Roth, and so these bits were blowing up on the show. And next thing you know, when Howard announced that he was leaving, you know, brilliantly they came up with this idea, why don't I take over the show before Howard comes back from vacation live and play a whole prank on the whole Howard Stern audience of, you know, bazillion people at the time, that he had been fired and that, you know, early out of his contract.
Yeah.
And that's what we did, and we created it brilliantly with Sal, Richard, Dan the Storm Parrot Man. We all wrote all of these bits, and it you know, it was amazing to be. I let it literally to go in there. It was surreal, and I think it was a Monday morning or something, and sit, you know, and take over the show like you're doing right there. It was surreal because I was the guy.
Did you sit when you did David Lee Roth? Were you doing David Lee Roth in Howard's chair?
Yes.
Oh
yes,
my God!
Yes, it was Howard's basically taking over. You know, it was you know, taking over his time with David Lee Roth. Welcome to the Roth Show. You know, and it was on Free FM, baby. And you know, it was like just basically playing a big prank on them. And I had to come up with hours of, you know, all of us did. We had to come up with hours of material. It was a lot of preparation. They recorded a phony announcement at the beginning of the show that they had that Howard had been fired. From somebody from Infinity Broadcasting or something like that. I think it was Infinity. I don't know.
Yeah, it was Infinity at the time, yeah.
Yeah. And then it was all the bumpers, David Lee Roth bumpers, all the commercials. So there was like a week that went into the production crew, just basically coming up with all of this. And it sounded so real.
Yeah.
And I was taking calls. People were flipping out. I was taking calls from people all over the country. Howard called in. Robin called into the show. It was really, honestly, it was surreal. And you got to remember, this is before Instagram, Facebook, social media was huge at that time. It made every newspaper, Rolling Stone. I mean, it was all over the news, like within minutes.
And
it was crazy that Howard had been fired.
And then literally, what was it? 4 years later, or whatever. What was the span when Howard started at Sirius? Well, it was just Sirius Radio at that point. Now, then the transition when David Lee Roth actually does take over the Howard Stern show area.
Yeah. Well. Yeah, so the craziest thing for me was that now David, you got to remember, this guy, you know, I love David Lee Roth. I only do impressions of people I like, you know, that I could do. And David Lee Roth was a huge influence on me growing up. And to hear him speaking about me on the Howard Stern show and then bringing me up on Free FM, his first 2 hours, he was live. He was talking about me. I was
that's amazing. That's psychotic, really.
Yeah, but it was insane.
Yeah.
It was like he was on the Stern show. I mean, Artie Lang, I remember when David Lee Roth had made an appearance on the show, said my name and mentioned me, and I got a phone, Artie calls me up. He goes, "Do you believe that?" And I missed it for some reason. And he goes, "David Lee Roth was talking about you on there. That's got to be like I go, "Are you serious?" And I went back and listened to the playbacks. I was like, holy shit. So for me, that was the mind-blowing part, to know all these rock stars like Sammy Hagar had reached out to me, and I did his Sammy and Friends show that he did with Michael Anthony and all of these other great artists. And I had become friends with all of these metal guys that I was inspired by for years. So for me, that was amazing.
Well, how
but Dave,
great...
unfortunately, it didn't transfer his personality.
Well, that's what I'm saying. How great was that your bullshit show of David Lee Roth was better than the actual David Lee Roth show?
And that's what everybody said. It was like insane. They should have hired Mira just to go in.
Oh, absolutely.
I heard there were rumors that if he hadn't been fired, and I heard this from pretty good sources, that they were going to call me to go in and work with him.
Oh, that would have been amazing.
Forget about it. He didn't. I don't think he lasted a few months, unfortunately. No. But everything I had, which the crazier part was, everything I had predicted on my show, he did. My mock show, live in front of all these people. Yeah, he did a lot of that stuff. You got to remember, we were syndicated in how many cities as Howard. Mm-hmm. He wasn't. David Lee Roth wasn't syndicated in all those cities.
No.
And when I predicted that he was going to put sand in the studio, he was going to let the lights, he was going to open up the windows. He did everything we spoke about.
Well, I always find this, because I've been in the radio business for like 2 decades now and everything, busting my ass, working in the business. I want to know who sat there in the fucking meeting and said, who we should get to replace Howard Stern, the king of all fucking media? David Lee Roth. Like, who thought that was a great idea?
I'm going to tell you what I think.
Please do.
When you think about what I think, because David Lee Roth happens to be an extremely intelligent individual and actually has a wide range of knowledge. He's worldly,
martial artist.
He speak well. The problem is nobody wants to hear that David Lee Roth.
Right.
They don't want to hear the guy talking about, being an EMT, and they really want to laugh and be entertained. Yeah. And I think that's what it was. I think he needed a good year or two just to develop. You got to remember, this is a guy who never did. Howard developed for years before he blew up.
Oh, absolutely.
This is a guy who didn't develop yet and find his voice.
Yeah, but when you think comedy, you don't go Diamond Dave.
Yeah. Well,
that's who I think.
No.
Watch some of his live performances.
Right. How many rock star stories can you make interesting before it gets boring after a while?
Every one of his stories. I was getting blown backstage at a Van Halen concert.
I like this show.
Yeah, exactly. What if I told you Panama was really a stripper in Florida? It was like, he was like, and how many times you can tell that story?
Yeah. All right. So. Now, comedy, by the way, being the second and the impressions being the third of your world, your first love always being music, you are a fucking talented, and I really mean this, I'm not blowing smoke up your ass. I'm being straight up honest, because I watched a whole reel. There's a sizzle reel of Billy Mira that you can watch that's on YouTube and everything, where you are performing all these songs that you are all over the place. You're like a fucking bullet on stage, just bouncing around, singing all different kinds of music. And on top of everything else, you perform some of the best fucking, like that big band quality, Billy. You know that.
Yes,
Brian Setzer and the organ. He is, Billy is on par with that.
Yes.
Billy Mira is on par with that. Now, what is your background? Like, what's the thing that you love? Who was the artist that inspired you that way?
Well, I started as a singer. That's really, where I made my bones for years. So I was always on stage. And I had always, whenever I was on stage, I was always thinking, man, I'd love to be a stand-up comic, because I was a huge fan of comedy, growing up. And I used to do impressions. But I never thought I could make a career out of it. You think, how many Italian guys are going to do Robert De Niro and, John Travolta and all this other bullshit. You're thinking, nobody's going to want to hear this stuff. And then but I did all these rock guys as well that nobody did. And I just, one day after my music career had basically, was, really not existent at that point, I just started doing comedy. And that's when everything started happening. It was crazy. And I started doing impressions in my act, and I was, coming up and coming. And then, of course, naturally, it was discovered by the Stern Show, and the rest is history. But it was insane. That was what I did for years, singing. singing was my first love, and it still is.
Well, let me tell you, it shows, dude, because you have one hell. First off, you have a nice set of pipes. You're doing and in different various styles. That's the thing. I mean, we have Ricky here is a musician. Joe behind me, Billy fucking has worked with a lot of musicians, and somewhat is a guy who has done a lot of studio stuff with a lot of musicians, so he knows what I'm talking about. When you have different genres that are on stage, and you are hitting the mark on every single one of them, how do you not have a Vegas fucking show? Why did you stay over here and not go to the West Coast?
Well, I did, and you know, it's funny because I was out in Vegas for a couple of years, and I was doing a sports show on Fox Sports out there, and Fox 5 Television. We had and I did that for 2 years, and when that ended, I really shouldn't have been like. It was a show I had developed in the time when it was the wild, wild west of mixed martial arts, before the UFC had signed that big $700 million deal with Fox.
Yeah,
it was very hard to get news, except for a few websites, SureDog and Bloody Elbow, and some of these websites. So, oddly enough, I knew a guy from Sirius who was doing like this little-known show that was called the Sirius Fight Club at the time. I don't even know if it still exists.
I don't believe
And I made some friends with some of the guys who were doing it, and one of the guys left Sirius, and he called me up. He goes, I want to do a show. And I had just built this whole huge studio in the back. You know, and I was trying to figure out how do I, you know, just to practice and figure out if I want to do a comedy show and then sell it to somebody. And I said, wow, an MMA show that's MMA entertainment might work. And sure as shit, he had all these contacts, and we started breaking story after story out of my studio and all of these websites because they were so hungry. We were getting all these huge fighters. They were giving us these great quotes. Then we partnered with a website that was taking our interviews, and they were transcribing them and press releasing them. Well, the show blew up. It was like one of those weird things because there was at that time, no main outlets for this shit.
You found an audience,
yeah. I found an audience, I found a niche at the right, then they say right time, right place, and that's exactly what I did. So when I went out to Vegas, I did that for a couple of years, and I got to be honest, it was a great experience, but I always knew in the back of my head, man, this is not where I'm supposed to be, And I said, when it ended, and I was driving out of Vegas, I looked back and I go, when I return here, I'm going to fucking have a big Vegas show, and I had already written it in my head. And that's when I got back, and I started writing this thing, Billy Mira and the Hitmen. It was hits, Hitmen, New York. It sounded Vegas. It sounded Broadway, and that's how it all started. And it just developed, and I slowly started developing the show out here. And now we are looking at Vegas, which is great, So we're, going out there. I don't want to see the dates exactly yet, but we have tentative dates that are in the books right now. And just to kind of clarify, when people come and hang out with us on October 28th, it's a meet and greet to come meet Sal, myself, and Richard. The crazy thing about the show that we developed over the years is that, about 5 years ago, Sal started coming into the show, and he started doing segments with me, and he was actually helping me write. Sal is an amazing song parody writer, comedy, so I would throw ideas out at Sal, and I would say, Sal, I have an idea for this. What could I do here? And he would bounce it back, and it would be brilliant. I'd go on stage, and everybody would love it. So then I said, why don't you come on stage? And we developed this Dean and Jerry thing. And we did like our first show maybe 5 years ago. It was a For Lovers Only. It was a Valentine's Day show. The place was packed. Everybody loved it. And they kept asking us, when are you going to do that show again? Then COVID hit. And when we came back from COVID, the only thing I wanted to focus on was the show that we were all doing together, was Sal and I. I thought there was real value there. I think the fans would really appreciate it, and we could do a lot with it, And what was the obvious thing, Ed? Fucking Richard Christie.
Absolutely.
An amazing fucking drummer. So you think he's a huge metal drummer. Both of us come from this metal world, right? But to play that big band stuff, you really have to know how to read. It's a different feel. Well, Richard, I had no idea, had a swing background because he had studied, I guess, swing big band music. And the guy is so amazing that he just basically will sit down and play it like as if he's been playing it for the last 50 years.
Yeah.
And it was just, and he's into comedy and the whole thing, and he's a character that everybody knows. So to have the three of us together is just like a perfect fit. Sal fits his piece, I fit my piece, and Richard fits his piece. And we've been developing this show around it. And, it's funny, these new producers that we're working with, we were going to originally call it the Spectaculars. Because every show we were doing was like, it's the Christmas Spectacular, it's the Easter Spectacular, it's the Spring Spectacular, it's whatever Spectacular, Summer Spectacular.
Yeah, everything's a spectacular.
They said, we fucking love the Hitmen. So they really want to take that idea and go with that and basically make it the three of us. So that's what we're looking at right now. And we are looking at dates to launch it in Las Vegas very shortly. And I because there's some ink drying, I don't want to announce it just yet, but it looks like it's going to happen sometime in December. So stay tuned. Stay on my website. If anybody, go to Billy Mira, BillyMiraandtheHitmen.com, and just, follow Sal, follow Richard, and we'll be posting those dates, and I'll call in as well and speak to you again.
Well, I'll tell you right.
See, now, Ed,
I'm going to tell you.
I was going to talk a lot. Now I want to shut the fuck up.
That's fine. First off, it's easy. I've been talking for 2 hours. I could just lean back and let you fucking do all the talking, Barry. It's fine.
You did.
Yeah, I did. Danielle, by the way, in the Facebook Live suite is saying the three of them are fucking awesome with like about 7 exclamation points because they are, because that's the weirdest part. Richard Christie is a world-renowned fucking drummer. A lot of people don't know that unless you know Richard's backstory. Yeah, everyone thinks he's just this hayseed from fucking Kansas that, doesn't wash his balls. But other than that, he's also a phenomenal fucking, amazing talent when it comes to drums. He's played in Death. Fucking, what was it?
Iced Earth.
Iced Earth is the one I was trying to think of. Yeah, and he's fucking phenomenal.
Yeah.
Now, the X factor here for a lot of people is probably going to be Sal, but a lot of people don't know. If you've actually heard, Sal can actually sing and kind of hold his own, at least playing the part that he's supposed to be playing. I mean, Billy knows this. He wouldn't have him on if he sucked.
Well, and that's the thing. Sal, yes, can hold his own.
Yeah.
In many different ways, that's the beauty of it. It's a Dean and Jerry thing. Jerry was, followed Dean. Martin did a lot of the singing, but, Jerry would sing along with, with Dean, and they had these bits, and Jerry was like the comedy writer. So the three of us bring something so different to the table and make it, the three of us together, make it all come alive. So Sal, yes, he's come along as a singer. He's a comedian. He's a phenomenal comedy writer. Song parodies, everything. So when you put the three of us together, it's like magic.
Some would say, Billy, that it's a fucking spectacular. I'm just saying.
It is.
Some would say that.
Yes, we keep going back to that spectacular thing. Yeah, yes, it is. It is a spectacular.
Right, so by the way, they're playing the Warehouse in Amityville, New York, Saturday night, October 28th. The pregame, the freaking early stuff starts at 6 p.m., 6:30, around that time. They're going all the way to 12 a.m. for your little spooky holiday Halloween stuff. Now, you're getting one hell of a show, though, Billy. So you gotta factor that in.
So just to kind of Ed, I want to clarify.
Please clarify.
Okay. What we're doing, it's a Halloween party. We're not doing the spectacular show there. It's what they've asked is actually we're writing, getting ready for the Vegas dates. Okay, that's what we've been writing and getting ready for that. This is a Halloween show with a band called Chaotica that's going to be joining us. And we're going to be getting up on stage and playing with them. We're going to be having fun. We're going to be talking to the audience. We're going to be it's like a huge, basically a meet and greet. And, with a Halloween party meet and greet where we get to hang out and talk to the fans. And we'll sing. I'll sing with the band. And, Sal will get up and do some stuff. And Richard will play. And, we'll get to talk to them. But just so everybody knows, the first VIPs have been sold out, so where you get to hang out with us beforehand.
Yeah.
But come down, call now, get your tickets for that show, because the next 2 weeks it's gonna start filling up real fast.
Now,
VIPs are sold out.
Now, quite frankly, let me point out one thing though. I think Billy's downplaying this. First off, you have Chaotica, which is a fucking great Metallica cover band, who is going to be wrecking the fucking house at the Warehouse. That's number one. Then you're going to have a talent like fucking Billy Mira be on stage joining in. Then the cream of the fucking crop there of Sal and Richard working together. Also, think about it. Chaotica, You got Richard Christie. You got drums. You got a whole bunch of stuff going on. Plus, a costume contest will be going on. Cool. It is a giant Halloween party that's going to be going. I know he's saying it's a meet and greet. I know that Billy wants to slow down the roll. I think this is a giant epic party that's going to be going on in Amityville, and I think you have to get.
Well, that's the greatest thing about it.
Yeah.
That's the greatest thing about it. We don't know what's going to happen, and that's we're playing into the whole Halloween theme. We could blow up at the end of the night.
Knowing you three, it'll be a spectacular explosion.
It'll be a spectacular Halloween style, baby.
Now, is Diamond Dave going to be there? Is Ozzy going to be there? Is anyone else going to be?
Look at all the people here tonight. Yeah. So, yeah, we'll all be there. We'll all be there together, having a good time. Ozzy will show up, and and we'll have. And there's going to be some other special guests that are going to be showing up, but you have to come to find out. And trust me, they're spooky and they are fucking cool, man. The people that are going to be there with us. And when we do this thing in Vegas, there's going to be some amazing. It's going to be a star-studded thing as well. So we're really excited about it.
Well, if you are excited, as everyone else seems to be, because remember the VIPs have already sold out. Really, all you're going to do is get your regular tickets, but your regular tickets are still getting you into a show that you have no clue what the fuck is going to happen. So it's damn well worth the price of the appearance
so
here.
The VIPs. Yeah, Eddie. So the VIPs, just to clarify, are before. They get to come in and hang out with us beforehand.
Yeah.
Without anybody else around. The later on tickets, everybody will be hanging out. So we'll be mingling as well throughout the whole night, drinking with everybody. But, the VIPs that are sold out now are basically a party. Like, they get to come in before and hang out and talk to us and, whatever the hell it is that they want to do. But, yeah, unfortunately, that's sold out at this point.
All right, so the WarehouseLI.com to get your tickets. The WarehouseLI.com. Pay very close attention. Or what you could do is you can go to Billy's website, Billy Mira and the Hitmen.com. You can be, there's a link. Everything's there. All the dates and everything else are up there. So if you say you missed this show, say you get bummed out. Remember, he's got the Vegas shows coming up soon. He doesn't want to talk about them because we don't have a good legal team. But we will fucking make it happen. It's not it's going to happen. So the big shows are going on. This show, if you want an up close and personal kind of hanging out session with Richard Christie, Sal from the fucking Howard Stern Show, and of course Billy Mira, this is what you have to do to be a part of this on the 28th in Amityville. All you have to do is go to the WarehouseLI.com. That's the WarehouseLI.com. Get your tickets now, okay? Billy, thank you for being on the show, brother. Thank you, and also please thank David Diamond Dave there, please, and thank Ozzy and everyone else that's living inside of your head. Okay?
Of course, I'm gonna have a good time, man. And rock and roll.
Thank you, Ozzy, and thank you, Billy Mira. For more information, like I said before, please get off your ass and go to Billy Mira and the Hitmen.com. Thank you, Billy.
I love you guys.
Love you too, brother. Rock on, brother. Rock on. Right. Round of applause for Billy Mira, goddammit.
Yes.
Okay. Round of applause. He is a phenomenal talent, and check out all the stuff. And if you don't believe me, go to his website and find out. We got